Hey there, this is Jake here with SF Indie Fest, and we're here to talk about our adventure shorts program. And with us, we have two filmmakers of two different projects, and we'll have them introduce themselves and their projects. So, uh, Nicholas.
Sweet. Yeah, my name is Nick Natali. I'm the director of Games of Survival, A Culture Preserved in Ice. Um, it's a short film. I hope you enjoyed it. I am located in Vermont, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome, and you, Taylor.
All right. Hey, so my name is Taylor Glenn. I'm a photographer and filmmaker based in Jackson, Wyoming. And I'm here today to share about my film River Surfer. And yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll just start with you, Taylor. So, how did River Surfer come about?
So I, well, there's a lot of things that led to it. First and foremost, I had been looking for an opportunity to dive into motion. I'm a still photographer primarily. That's my background. And I had done a little bit of motion work here and there, but I wanted to do something more formal. And so, I was looking around me at stories that I thought would be interesting and from both, narrative point of view, but also, a visual point of view, of course. And river surfing is something that I got obsessed with a few years ago, and it's just such a unique and beautiful sport, and it's something that not a lot of people know about actually, and it's kind of growing. People are finding waves all around the world, and it's starting to sort of it's kind of like the unknown, this unknown niche of the surfing world at large. And so I thought it was an opportunity to tell an interesting story that is people don't know a lot about, and also really create something personal and interesting, and create a motion piece for sharing my work and sharing these stories.
Yeah, and yeah, Nick, same to you. I mean, you have another like very idiosyncratic but really compelling piece. So how'd you fall into that culture and meet those guys?
Sure. Yeah. At the time that I made the film, I was living in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I had traveled to Alaska a summer before and saw a flyer for WEO, the World Eskimo Indian Olympics, and it was just kind of sitting in the back of my mind. And when I was there the second time, I had anticipated on making the film, and I initially reached out to Nick Hansen, the Eskimo Ninja, and it was gonna be sort of catered just around him and his character and his family. Um, but the more that I started working with him, and when I actually attended the games at of WEO, I started meeting so many other interesting folks, and I just knew that I had to kind of expand the scope. So that's where I met Stan, the other character, and Amber as well. And the community was just so welcoming. Every person that would interview would tell me about somebody else that I needed to talk to. So it just kept growing and growing. And yeah, it was super awesome to work with all those guys. Nick and Stan have two like very different personalities and sort of two different lifestyles. Nick in Unalakleet is a very fishing heavy lifestyle, whereas Stan in Anatuvik Pass is hunting and extreme subsistence living, whereas Unalakleet is a little bit more accessible. So it was really interesting to have that two completely different experiences making the film.
And how long did you stay with each subject? How long did you spend in that environment?
So the WEO games themselves were 5 days long, and those were right there in Fairbanks. And then I was in Unalakleet for 4 days and Anatuvik Pass for 4 days as well, and then a couple of other pickups here and there within the Fairbanks area.
Awesome, awesome. And yeah, Taylor, for you, you said you were, kind of learning more about the specific surfing subculture. How did you find, the fellow that you knew you would use? Like, was it kind of a trial and error? Did you just kind of connect with him in particular?
Oops. Okay, wait. I think I was muted. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
All right. So, um, yeah. So I took it upon myself to really spend time learning that place, getting to know people and learning how to surf that wave actually before I felt like it was, appropriate to break out a camera. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people are aware that, when you show up in a new place, especially in something like surf culture or any kind of, spot, there's where people are gathered and there's a community. It's important, especially at least from my point of view, to really observe and embed yourself in a way before you try to, take something from that. And so I really spent time getting to know everybody and also really actually learning how to surf. It's become kind of a new obsession of mine. So, it kind of had a real personal connection to it in that way. And through that process, I got to know Gannett, the character in the story. And, I've made a lot of other amazing connections and friends through that process. And, I think that's one of the joys of, doing this work is, connecting with, people and telling those stories.
How long did it take you to feel like you were comfortable enough to like make that next step into being like, I'm good enough at surfing now that I can document this thing? Like, how long was that? How did that feel when you made that like transition? Like, I'm ready, I can do this.
Yeah, no, that's really a good question. I spent a couple years, really learning that wave, learning that place, getting to know the people, before I really felt like it was appropriate to start photographing and sharing and, putting that out. Gannett, who's the character, is actually, we call him sort of the mayor of the wave. He's one of the kind of the old guys. We call, actually lovingly call him Uncle Gannett. And, he's very, I mean, everybody really wants to, look out for that place, take care of it, we're all wary of social media, how things are these days. And you be really conscious about how you portray places, how you put things out in the world. That in this day and age, a few geotags and everything changes in terms of,
Yeah.
How the impact of the area and people use that area and so on. So that was something that we were really cognizant of. And because it was Gannett who was in the story, it was also kind of the guy who, we all look to and say, hey, like, we want to make sure it's okay with him before we, start doing these kind of things. And that's in that place. So, it took some time and, the ability to build their trust and know that, like, we were going to tell a good story and it was going to be, really focused on, the beauty and of the place, the beauty of the people in that community, and not just another kind of puff piece about a, specific spot or place, right? Like, this is,
Yeah.
it's not that it's a huge secret, but I think it's, important to have that genuine approach and like intent and good intentions. And, I think that we built that trust with the community, and that's, that enabled us to go in and do this kind of work. And I'm sure it's really similar with you, Nick. I just actually watched your piece just before this, and I just absolutely loved it. I like what a great story and interesting people. And I mean, yours is so much deeper than what I did. It's just, I'm sure you can, attest or speak to all of these things that I'm just sort of, hinting at.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Especially working with a culture that's different than your own, and native culture. can sometimes be hard to approach and, sort of get yourself involved in, I guess. And specifically with my two characters, I noticed that, like, in Unaclete, everybody's, is very friendly and open and welcoming. Whereas in Anatuvik Pass up in the Brooks Range, it's a little bit different, just because they don't really get a whole lot of tourists. And they were a forced settlement. So, in the 1950s, the group of Nunavut Eskimos were forced to live in that village. They were all nomadic. So, as far as the elders go, like, it's not like ancient history. It's still kind of fresh in their minds. Like,
Yeah.
the white man sort of did this to us, and, they're not as trusting. And I actually encountered that, like filming with one of the elders, and I sort of filmed something that, he didn't like that I was filming, and told me about it. And, I didn't end up including it, but yeah, whenever you go into a new community, you really just got to, like, feel out the vibes and, um, you know, stay back as much as you can. And that's sort of what I did. I'm much more interested in being, like a fly on the wall type of documentarian, just kind of hanging out and sniping in some shots while I can. And then, approaching people after they become comfortable. And, as you said, embedding yourself in the community, that's so huge. Um, yeah, I also loved your film. We've been in a few festivals together this year. I
Oh,
think
cool.
maybe, I don't know if it was Mountain Film or Five Point. There was also one in Washington, a small adventure film festival, but I remember seeing it. Anyway.
That's great. That's great.
Right on, right on. Well, you I'm really, yeah, I'm really glad that that's kind of emerging as the theme of what we're discussing, and just like how you can embed yourself in a community and learn, while also showcasing in a way. And I think that you guys both, like as you both said, really do a remarkable job of that. And you had mentioned that there was a part that through your better judgment, you're like, I want to include this. Were there things that you had shot that really kind of come to mind as like things that you were just kind of like, oh man, I wish I had used this, but it didn't feel right, or it didn't work with the sort of mood? Because there is a very like sustained mood and momentum to your piece. Was there something that you're just like, this is really great, but this kind of disrupts that, that comes to mind right now?
In my case, the more that I expanded the film and started interviewing other people, I started getting a lot of other stories that just I couldn't, put into the whole WEO atmosphere, because I was trying to tell a story about the World Eskimo Indian Olympics, how they promote community, and, how important these games are for their culture. So it was like a very specific thesis. But, like, for example, I interviewed my character Stan. I interviewed his mom, and just to get some kind of background on, on her story and how she feels about Stan. But it sort of shifted into, like, her personal experience of, being a Native woman and trying to preserve the culture. Her whole experience with the forced settlement scenario. She was a little girl. She got taken from the village and put in Catholic school in Fairbanks. So, these were like harrowing stories that I was like, man, I would love to include this, but it really is like a totally off topic thing.
Sure.
And it's like, that almost needs like its own film. So that happened with a few other interviews that I had, where it was just like, I thought that this person would be able to narrow in on my topic, but they were so off script. And that happens when you make a long form documentary. It's just, you talk to so many different people and you get a lot of, information. So
Yeah, yeah, and Taylor, I mean, your piece, I mean, it just feels like it's very focused and it's chiseled, and you really want to just like capture the experience as it's happening. Was that kind of always the original conception? I know you wanted to, capture bodies in motion, but did you envision it specifically as more of like a, we're just here for these few minutes with this experience, or did you that come later? Like, I'm curious, was that always the conception?
Yeah, from the beginning, as I had mentioned sort of at the beginning of the conversation, where the intent sort of was born out of this desire to create a motion piece that was kind of both a personal, like project, but also kind of a portfolio piece. I mean, to be perfectly honest, was trying to expand my motion work, and as a commercial photographer, that's a big thing in the industry now. And so I really wanted to showcase that ability from a production standpoint. And so that informed the approach in a lot of ways. I thought, hey, we need to keep this really tight and concise. Gannett he just had such a lovely, soulful presence, and what he wrote and how I sort of let him narrate it in a way. I mean, he just kind of, I sort of pitched the idea, and he came up with this really beautiful, kind of essay or written script that essentially what you hear, as you hear him narrate the piece, is more or less what he wrote. And so, yeah, it was kind of this like approach of like, let's keep it short and sweet, let's make this really beautiful, and let's not like overdo it. I mean, I think sometimes, especially in a situation like this, maybe a little bit less is more. But it's such an interesting place and beautiful place. Of course, there's tangents that you could go on for sure. But that was definitely a driving factor, was to try to like really stay within some boundaries on that.
Yeah, you're capturing a moment in time, and his mindset as he's doing it is very like, it's kind of like the way like Malick uses voiceover, not describing the action, but maybe how someone is feeling during that. Reminded me of like some like Days of Heaven or those moments in the New World. That's like, that's not to, in a narrative perspective. So yeah, speaking of moments in time, I'm just kind of curious what the sort of the tail of this has been. So like Taylor, what the have you kind of kept in touch with Gannett and everybody else in that community? Have things kind of changed? I know you want to keep everything kind of on the DL, but how is that been?
Yeah.
And,
So
and everything.
I'm a very good, Gannett and I are great friends now. And we, I think really expounded our relationship as a result of doing this film together. And, I think that overall the community, at the Wave really embraced it. I think people were really excited about it. We tried to be very respectful about, everyone, how we share it, how we talk about it. And I think people really appreciated that, and they recognize that it wasn't just like this kind of opportunist type thing. It was really like the intention, that primarily the idea of it was to be a character study. I mean, it backed up with beautiful visuals, and that's kind of the thing, because Gannett's such an interesting guy, and that was really the impetus for it in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's been a great thing to connect more to that community. And, I've got a lot of great friends around that Wave, and it's actually going to start up here soon. So we're all ready and excited. And, I can't wait to, get back down there with these people. Some of these folks I actually don't even see any other time except for the short time that this thing happens. So it's, it's really unique in a lot of ways for that reason.
Awesome. Hey, Nick, same question for you. I mean, have you kept in touch with the folks, the Wheel Games, or kind of what's maybe the response to the short? Just kind of how's the lifespan of this been?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mainly keep in touch with Stan. Nick has, he's doing his own thing. He's still doing the American Ninja Warrior stuff. He was on last season, and he's going to be on again this season. So that's huge for him. He's doing great in Cleat, getting sponsors across Alaska. So yeah, he's doing really good. Stan just had a baby, so he's back in Anatuvik Pass with his girlfriend. And yeah, he's just doing the family life stuff, hunting, living the simple life, I guess. It's pretty wild up in Anatuvik Pass. But but yeah, the reception was great. I mean, they were very happy with the film, which made me feel good. You know, I didn't want to expose them in any way that they, you know, didn't want to be a part of it or anything. Um, and yeah, I mean, the festival reception has been awesome. Everybody is stoked on it. So I was really happy to just present these games to the world. You know, like not many people knew about the World Eskimo Indian Olympics. So I felt kind of honored to be like the first film about the games. Um, yeah, and to Taylor's point, you know, about kind of like making a character piece, like I noticed, you know, you have a lot of great like portraiture photography, so it almost seemed like this piece was like a natural progression for you as far as like taking that, you know, portraiture style of yours and sort of like making a moving image piece where, you know, the subject is narrating and it's like it focuses on this one guy. You know, because like you said, there are so many other things you could have did. You could have talked about this, the history of the river surfing, and interviewed a couple of these other guys. So yeah, I thought it was really nice that you kind of honed in to one character. And that's sort of how my film evolved is, you know, I had Nick, and then as I expanded, I had so many other characters, that it sort of became overwhelming, and I couldn't make the audience like love all of them, but I knew I could make the audience love, you know, these two guys. So that's sort of how the edit evolved. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, I mean, you guys have both seen each other's work and seen, you know, cycle together. Do you have any questions for each other about each other's respective pieces that you were curious about? It's always good to hear filmmakers' perspectives on each other's work.
Yeah, I just, you know, I wish I'd have known that you were doing this and I could have jumped on board to come tag along and help you shoot. Such an interesting, you know, such an interesting thing. It made me, you know, think immediately about, you know, some of the past projects I've done, and, you know, just the logistical challenges of shooting and, you know, producing something like that. And then also just the, like, I don't know, the challenges of like inserting yourself into a new community. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And so, you know, there's a lot to be said for that. And, you know, kudos to you for making all that happen, man. It's really, really an interesting story. And, you know, what you were just saying about the fact that you first had, you know, one person that you were focusing on. I mean, it seems so, you know, obvious that in a way that you had to include some of these other folks, because I mean, that's such a rich story. And I mean, there's so many ways you could go with it, but, you know, to be able to focus on a few people, I think really made it interesting, because it added that depth and perspective to it that was really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and you know, there was a few other pieces out there that were more of like a news piece that went into specifics on, you know, this particular game, that particular game. Um, and I just thought that, you know, it was better to sort of give a broad overview from the character perspective, and like how important the games are, to their lifestyle, and, you know, like their family and friends and everything. I just thought it was so interesting, you know, like there's no other sport that I could think of where like competitors are helping each other to do better.
Yeah.
And that's like what I loved about it. You know, like as the film says, like sportsmanship is huge in the Wii U games. And it's just like the entire time they were there, you know, a better athlete would be helping the next guy. So, you know, that was just amazing to see. Um, and yeah, you know, like it was a no budget film essentially. So when, you know, once I met Stan at WEO and I had to come up with, you know, $600 to fly to Anatuvik Pass, it was like, oh man, this is getting serious, you know? And luckily the reception has been great, and I've been able to sort of make back some of that on the other side. But yeah, like I just knew as soon as I saw Stan at WEO, he was such a big figure. I waited about a day to kind of feel him out and see what he was up to. And then I approached him the next day and was like, hey, do you want to be a character in this film? This is what I'm doing. By the way, can I come to your village like within the next month? And he was just like, yeah, whenever you want. And, you know, I flew up there, and it was just so picture perfect. It was August 1st, and as soon as I landed that first night, it snowed up on elevation. So like when I got there, all the mountains were just bare, and then we had that like snow from halfway up to the top, and it was just absolutely incredible for the film. So I was very thankful. Um, yeah, great people, and it was awesome just developing those relationships.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, what I guess we'll start with you, kind of like doing a fun snake order. What do you have next? Are you working on developing this further, or any other sort of projects in the pipeline?
Sure. As far as professional work goes, I've been in the process of finishing up a film about a Bosnian family that left Bosnia during the Civil War in the early 90s. So we made a trip over there a few summers ago to film a big family reunion. So that's sort of in the works. And I'm working on a project in town about a maple syrup distributor, a longtime Vermont family that's been making maple syrup since about the Civil War, and they've had this family business. So that's happening, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, COVID has really killed all the other projects. Another project I had in mind was working with elderly people to talk about sort of like the history of the telephone and communication in rural areas. But again, I'm kind of waiting till it's completely safe to, go
Right.
and work with them. So.
That's good. Taylor, what about you? What do you have on the pipeline?
Well, yeah, I've been mostly focused on commercial work lately. Fortunately, I've had some. I know it's been a really tough go for a lot of freelancers out there, and so I'm really grateful to have had some work, and just trying to keep some of that going forward while things are happening, so that when I'm ready to get back into a space for some personal projects again, I'll be able to sort of make that shift when the something, I guess, sparks my interest or the inspiration comes. I'd love to do another piece or some more portraits like this. It's, to me, a lot of times I find those are the most compelling types of stories, or those like intimate sort of portraiture driven type narratives. And so I'm just I guess waiting for the right inspiration to spark and motivation to get it going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, both y'all made deeply personable, and with a specific eye. So it's not gonna, you don't want to just go in guns a-blazing to something else. Like, you got to take some time to sit and think with it. Well, speaking of sitting and thinking, thank you both so much for joining us for this conversation. Thank you, viewers, for watching. We have different and other conversations to follow, but please keep watching everything else in the Livable Planet Festival. And thanks again. Take care.
Thank you guys so much.